perfect, cool. So the idea here, guys, is a lot of people had questions about how the process of intubation goes at the OR here. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about how OR is different from the streets. So your patient, first of all, is going to be all fasted. Usually these are going to be elective operations, so they're all going to be fasted, which means that for the most part you're not going to have to worry about the salad technique where you go in and suction everything out, right? You're going to have a patient who's not going to have vomit everywhere, which is awesome. So a couple of things I want to go over. Let's see, so first is like the request to intubate patients. I know Emily talked to you a little bit about this, but make sure you always have an anesthesiologist with you or a nurse, and usually they will ask permission for this student, you, right, to intubate this patient. And usually they'll do it without you too, especially as a student, but make sure you always get permission before you go in. If you get into the OR with a patient who is unconscious and you say, and they ask you, because they will, did you get permission from the patient? You say no, you're going to leave, right? So make sure that you have obtained permission, even if it's a third-party permission, okay? So the second thing we'll talk about, like we rolling the patient over to the OR, and for the most part, they're going to start inducing the patient to sort of get their anxiety down with propofol, right? So they'll give them 1 mics per kg of propofol. This is a sedative hypnotic medication. It's the white medication, so it looks like milk that's going to be flowing into the patient. So that's what that is, right? That's the first thing that we're going to do. Once we get them in to the OR, right, they're going to start to be kind of loopy, right? They're going to give them their induction dose of propofol, and then potentially they'll give them a paralytic as well, like succinylcholine or rocuronium, right? So at this point, we really get to what we're here for. You have a patient who's just been induced. Right before the induction, usually what's going to happen is they're going to hand you this mask. This mask is going to have a bunch of oxygen flowing through it. It's just going to have a flow leader flowing through it. And before they induce the patient, you're going to be holding this over the patient, right? The patient's still going to be awake, but you're just going to be holding it over the patient. Don't smother him with it, right? You'll just sort of hold it over the patient so they can get a bunch of oxygen here, okay? And then once they start inducing, they're going to be like, all right, so we're going to induce, so go ahead and start seeing if the patient's out, right? And that's a big one, right? So they'll induce, it'll be a handful of seconds before this patient loses consciousness. And so from here, right, they'll close their eyes probably. What you're going to do is sort of fan their eyelashes here, right? If their eyelashes flutter, that means that they're not out, right? You can also sort of feel their jaw. If their jaw is really, really loose, they're out. If it's not really loose, they're not out. And the big thing that's important here is that you have to make sure you have a patient who's unconscious before you get this mask seal on. Because in the street, right, we might just sort of press a mask down and bag on a patient. But in the OR, you don't have an OPA, so you really need to have a good jaw thrust. And so the jaw thrust that we're going to do is going to be making sure that you really get under the rim of the jaw. So your pinky, maybe your ring finger as well can hit at the corner of the jaw. That third finger, though, is going to be right under the jaw, and we're going to start pulling it up. Now, really important here is that you make sure this patient doesn't bite their tongue or their lips as you move it forward, right? So their teeth are going to close, but you want to make sure that you flip their lip up and you see their teeth go together without any lip in there. That's really important, all right? So you'll get the mask over, you'll sort of flip the lips here, you'll close their teeth, and from here, you really want to press their jaw up. And so you can see his jaw closed right here. That's exactly what it's going to end up looking like. This is your ventilation maneuver right here, okay? Now, once it's in like that, you're going to see this bag over here inflate. Now, something really weird about the OR is that they don't have a BVM like we see here, and this is going to be a self-filling BVM is what this is called. This is a, what's it called? Like a
self-inflating
BVM, right? It's the one that we have in the street, right? Self-inflating BVM. They have a non-self-inflating BVM, and so what it looks like is it's going to be attached to a ventilator. It's just going to be hanging there. It's usually green. It just looks like a floppy balloon, right? If that balloon stays floppy, it means you don't have a good seal because there's a bunch of oxygen that's flowing through it. So once you get a good seal, you'll see that balloon inflate, and from there you can reach over, you're going to squeeze that balloon, and you're going to be looking for chest rise. Now remember, we don't have an OPA in here, so you're focusing completely on getting their tongue off of their pharynx by pulling up their jaw, right? And a lot of times they'll think about just having this patient sort of up in the air. Obviously don't go that hardcore with them, right? But you're really pulling their jaw into that mask to get the seal. And so you'll start BVMing over here. If you have a good chest rise here, that means you have a great seal, and that's going to be sort of your first step into getting that intubation. If you can BVM well, they're going to be more confident with you moving forward, right? So this is really how you're going to be doing this in the OR here. All right.